Hello everyone, welcome to Mallon Technology's first webinar entitled An Introduction to Sentinel-2. My name is Paul Farrell and I'll be giving a bit of an introduction today. As I say, my name is Paul Farrell, 20 years experience working in the GIS industry, specialising in land management and the utilities sector. And with me today, presenting on the practicalities of Sentinel, we have Calvin McCoy and Ian Hand. Calvin and Ian are both GIS RS experts. Calvin specialises in land cover using RS, and Ian specialises in land cover and flood risk mapping. The webinar today will be recorded, so you'll be fit to download it shortly after the event. And if you have any questions and answers, if you wouldn't mind just using the chat during the webinar, and we'll endeavour to answer them towards the end, if that's okay. So feel free to write whatever questions you may have, and we'll take them all on board. So without further ado, we'll go through a bit of an introduction into the webinar itself. So who's the webinar aimed at? It's really aimed at anyone who has a need for regular and up-to-date imagery, anyone who uses GIS or remote sensing, for land cover or land use, for change detection, including growth or vegetation, plant health, water bodies, flooding, flood risk mapping, fire, insurance, or any sort of disaster mapping. The webinar itself is an introduction, so it's covering the basics of Sentinel-2, and it's aimed at an audience with no assumed previous knowledge. So a bit of an introduction to the background of Sentinel, and specifically what is Sentinel? Well, Sentinel itself is a family of missions under the Copernicus program, which is an Earth observation program that primarily aims to provide accurate and easily accessible information to improve management of the environment. It's an initiative headed by the European Union or European Commission in partnership with the European Space Agency. It previously went under the name of GMES, the Global Monitoring for Environment and Security. And each Sentinel mission, of which there are 6, Sentinel 1 to 6, is based on a constellation of 2 satellites. And those satellites provide various different types of information. The missions carry a range of technologies such as radar and multispectral imagery and instruments for land and oceanic and atmospheric monitoring. Today we're looking at Sentinel-2, and Sentinel-2 is 2 satellites, Sentinel-2A and 2B. They're identical twins. Sentinel-2A was launched on the 23rd of June 2015. And Sentinel-2B will follow in 2017. The 2 Sentinel satellites, when commissioned, will be polar orbiting, providing multispectral high-resolution imagery for land monitoring, including vegetation, soil, water, land cover, and a few things we touched on earlier. They are multispectral, as I mentioned earlier on, and the spectral resolution of the information that Sentinel provides ranges from 10 to 60 meters, depending on the band combinations you use. So I suppose that gives a bit of an overview on the Sentinel programs themselves. As I say, Ian and Calvin will deal with the practicalities with some pretty interesting examples. So I'll hand you over to Calvin and Ian now at this stage. Calvin first of all, and if you wouldn't mind, ask any questions as you feel free. Thank you very much. Calvin.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul, and thanks everyone for attending today. I'm going to look at 2 methods for accessing, downloading, and processing Sentinel-2 imagery. And then we're going to move on and we're going to have a look at 2 short examples of applications of Sentinel-2 imagery. I'm going to have a look at identifying and delineating wildfire burning extents, and then my colleague Ian is just going to have a look at some crop change detection and NDVI. Okay, so we'll go on here and we'll have a look at the first method for accessing, downloading, and processing the Sentinel information. And this is basically using the ESA platforms that they've developed. So to get started with this, we can go on to the Sentinel Scientific Data Hub, and you can access that at scihub.copernicus.eu. And you'll see a few options down here. If we click on the Scientific Hub, this will bring us into the Sentinel Map Viewer. Hopefully it'll come up here now. Okay, so we're in the map viewer here now. To actually access the data that you want from this data hub, you need to register within an account. And you can do that up in the top right here where it says sign up. It's a straightforward process, and then just log in and you're ready to go. So once you've logged in, it's quite a simple platform to use. There's only a couple of tools. If you look up here in the top right hand corner, there's a draw region of interest tool. And if we click on this, we get one more tool, which is a navigate on map tool. We're just going to have a look now. If we just pan and zoom around, we're going to zoom into an area in Greece, our area of interest. And to set that as our area of interest, we just click up the top right again on the draw region of interest tool, and we can draw a bounding box. It's quite straightforward, really. We can run an advanced search now to, if we know a specific date range that we're looking for, an image. If you click on this button in the top left-hand corner of the search bar, and then just click on Sentinel-2 mission and scroll up, and you can put in the dates that you want. In this case, we're going to specify a date range from August the 29th until August the 30th. And just press enter then. Okay, so you can see two results have come up here. I'll just zoom out a small bit so you can see them on the map viewer. Okay, so if we hover over the very first result that's come up, you can see that the footprint is highlighting in green on the map viewer. And again, if we look at the lower one, we can see the footprint highlighted. To get more details and information on each image, if you just click on the eye icon here, the view product details, I'll just have one prepared here already. Okay, so this is what you get. You get a footprint of the image on the top left here, and you also get a quick look of the image. So hopefully you'll be able to see if the information is good enough for what you require. There's also some summary details here. You can see the date and time of acquisition, and also the size of the file. In this case, you can see it's 5.67 gigabytes, which is quite a large size for a file, obviously, to download it. There's some more metadata information you can access in the tabs here on the left. And once you're ready, if you just scroll over to the bottom right to download product, you can download it there. Okay, so once you've downloaded the product, to actually to view it and to do some processing on it, ESA provide an open source piece of software called Sentinel SNAP toolbox. Sorry. To access that, you can download it from this site. It's step.esa.int/main/download/. If you scroll down, you can see there's some options here for different operating systems. Once you've downloaded and open up the Sentinel SNAP toolbox, just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so it should look like this when you open it up. You have a map viewer here on the right, and a product explorer, kind of a layers panel up here on the left. This will be empty when you open it up, but for the purposes of this webinar, I have a few images loaded up here already. To open an image, you just simply go to File, Open Product. Just 1 second. Okay, now when you download a file from the Sentinel's data hub, it comes in zipped format, and you just need to unzip the file, and you'll see there's some subfolders in here. If you just want to open up the full image itself, just look for the XML file down the bottom, which I have selected here, and just click open. Don't mind this box that comes up for the moment. Okay, so you will get this box come up on your screen, and this is just prompting you to choose a UTM zone. So each Sentinel-2 image usually crosses 1 or 2 UTM zones, and you need to decide which one you want to look at. If you're not sure which UTM zone, you can just type in UTM zones into Google and do a search, and you should find something, an image with all the UTM zones around the world there. We'll choose UTM zone 35N for today, and if you click on OK, this will bring up the first product up here in the product explorer. At this point, we can open an RGB image quite simply. If we just go up to Window and open RGB image window, I have one pre-prepared here. Just bear with me. Okay, so this is a full RGB image that's opened up here now. Unfortunately, to do this in the SNAP toolbox, it can take quite a long time, a lot of processing. So ideally what we want to do is create a subset of just our area of interest. The actual process involved in doing that, unfortunately I don't have the time to go into all the details of that right now, but if anyone wants to help with that or wants to ask a question about it later, pop it up there on the question board or email us after, that's no problem. We'll have a look at helping you out. So once you have created a subset, you should end up with an image something like this. This is the area of interest that we've defined, and you can see You can see it's cut off from the rest of the image. At this point, you can do, there's tools up here in the top left to do some further analysis in the SNAP toolbox. You can bring in some vector layers and do some other things here, but it's my preference to actually export an image at this stage and use another GIS platform to do further analysis. So that's the first method for downloading and accessing Sentinel-2 information, and unfortunately it's quite cumbersome. You can see the file sizes are quite large, 6 gigabytes. If you need to download a few images, you're talking about a lot. You need a lot of space, some pretty good internet as well. So there's an alternative, second method for doing this, and it basically involves downloading the Sentinel-2 imagery in JP2 format. So there's a website here you can access. It's sentinel-pds.s3-website.eu-central-1.amazonaws.com. And if you scroll down the homepage, there's some information on the data, on the format, and so forth here. But if we keep going down, we'll eventually come to a map viewer. And hopefully you can see all the green tiles here. These are all the individual Sentinel-2 images. So if I just zoom in here to our area in Greece. Okay. Now, if we scroll up a bit, you can also see there's a bar here to change the date range. We'll have a go here, and you can also change the cloud coverage percentage. You can increase it or decrease it as needs be. So if you just click on one of these tiles, you'll get various options up here on the right, depending on how many results there are for that area. If we click on one of these, you'll see an image comes up at the bottom, and also some details about cloud coverage percentage and UTM zone processing level. To actually download the files, just go into link to tile data, and this brings up a separate window with the 13 individual Sentinel-2 bands here on the left. One of the great advantages of using this method is that you don't have to download all 13 bands. You only have to download the ones that you want, and the 10-meter bands in JP2 format will be usually about 100 megabytes. Some of the 20-meter bands, only 30 megabytes. So if you want to download a 6-band multispectral image, you're only looking at maybe 300 to 400 megabytes, which is much smaller than downloading a 6 gigabyte file from the Sentinel SNAP toolbox. So once you have your JP2 images down, you can open them up in a GIS platform. In this case, I've opened them up in QGIS, and you can see I have the 6 JP2 images. The JP2 bands here opened up in the layers panel. To actually get a workable and usable multispectral image at this point, you do need to do some processing in QGIS. Again, if anyone wants a hand with that or more information about it, just feel free to contact us and we'll help you out with that. But it basically involves resampling a couple of bands to the same pixel resolution and also creating a layer stack. So once we've done that, hopefully we should end up with an image something like this. I've created a subset here just to cut down on processing time again. So what we're going to do now is now that we have this information, we're going to look at how we can use it to identify and delineate wildfires and wildfire extents. So in this particular case in Greece, based on some research we've done, we know that there's been 3 or 4 significant wildfire events in the last 3 months on this peninsula. I can point them out briefly to you here. Just bear with me. So we know there's one somewhere up around here. There's another smaller one here, a fairly large one in the south here, and one more in the northeast. So to actually try and identify and bring that information out of the data, there's a few kind of processes we can do to the image. Firstly, we can apply a histogram stretch, a fairly basic histogram stretch here in QGIS. And you can see that this already visually enhances the image and makes it more natural looking in this case. So if we zoom in here to the larger wildfire burnt area in the south, we can see it's kind of showing up almost a grey-brown colour. But it's still hard to distinguish it completely from the surrounding landscape. So what we can do to kind of try and bring that information out a little more, one of the great things with Sentinel-2 having so many bands, is that we can do different band combinations, and in particular with wildfires and burning, we can use the shortwave infrared bands in combination with the near infrared band and the green band to try and bring out this information. So in this case, I'm going to run the Sentinel band 12, which is a shortwave infrared band, through the red color gun. I'm going to run the near infrared band through the green color gun, and I'm going to run the green band through the blue color gun. So if I apply this and press OK, and I'm just going to apply a histogram stretch again. Okay, so you can see the results that we've produced just from changing the band combinations. You can see, hopefully you can see the 4 burnt areas are all showing up quite a distinguishable red. If we zoom in here, you can see just how well this burnt area is demarcated from the rest of the landscape. So already we've got some great information just by changing the band combinations with the Sentinel-2 data. One more thing we can do at this point is apply a normalized burn ratio to the image, which is essentially just a formula for creating a single band grayscale image with values ranging from -1 to +1. So essentially we subtract, add and divide one of the shortwave infrared bands and the near infrared bands to create this single band grayscale image. So this is the result that we produce here. So you can see that the 4 burnt areas are showing up black here, and that's because the values, the individual pixel values are all grouping around a particular range of this burnt ratio. And we can apply classes to this image. We can create a threshold to try and define which pixels represent burnt areas, and we can apply a color ramp to that image as well. And you can see what we end up with. So now the burnt areas are showing up a very distinguishable red. And at this point, we can create polygons, vector polygons from these areas. We can import more vector layers and overlay them on the image and get some really good information and measure the areas, do some good analysis. So this is one example of what we can do with the Sentinel-2 data once we've accessed it and downloaded it. So I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Ian Hand now, and he's going to have a look at crop change detection and NDVI. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Calvin. Okay, so I'm going to look at change detection in a typical Irish rural landscape using Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, or NDVI. So before we go into NDVI, let's just examine 2 scenes taken from Sentinel-2 in RGB true color, so that's bands 2, 3, and 4. So the first scene was taken in April of this year. So for convenience, I drew 3 areas of interest just to draw your attention to potential changes. So you have a blue area of interest here where you see fields that are bare soil, which indicates it was freshly sown basically in April or potentially March previous. And in the red areas of interest, you have green fertile vegetation. When we turn on the July true color, you see the exact opposite has happened. So in the blue area of interest, you see lush green vegetation, so crops at their peak. And in the red area of interest, you have crops at the end of their cycle near harvest. So the reason why we look at NDVI for this is, first of all, NDVI, or Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, is an index used in vegetation studies to assess the quantity of chlorophyll, or the greenness, and also cell structure in plant leaves. So it's an established standard method of measuring the growth and health of vegetation. So in order to actually examine the relationship of NDVI, the various bands involved, there's a small illustration here. So the relationship NDVI has with bands, it's the near infrared and the red. So before we go into actually calculating NDVI, we need to look at these bands individually and what happens during photosynthesis. So with the visible red here, you can see in the healthy vegetation at the peak of photosynthesis, it's absorbing about 92% of the red band. So this would be used for photosynthesis, chlorophyll production, healthy plant. Near infrared, it takes in 50% and roughly bounces back 50%. So it doesn't really want near infrared. It can be quite harmful, potentially harmful to the plant. However, as the seasons go on and the crop is near harvest, you can see the visible red. It's now reflecting back 30%, so a lot less than what it was when it was at the peak of its health. And likewise, near infrared is taking in more this time, so it's accelerating the decay of the structures within cell structures within the leaves or the plant. So the actual NDVI itself, it's a panchromatic band, and you use the near infrared minus red, and then you divide that by near infrared plus red. So you can see the equations here, and so 0.72 would be a typical healthy vegetation green value, and a 0.1, which is basically close to 0. It's very little chlorophyll, it's decaying vegetation or cell structure breaking up. So to actually produce an NDVI band in quantum GIS here, you go into raster and raster calculator. So you start an open bracket. In this case, April band 4, it's your near infrared. You then take away April band 3, which is the visible red, close this bracket, divide, open another bracket, and this time it's your it's the same thing. It's the near infrared, only this time you're adding the red. Then you save that off as a GeoTIFF, save to your desired directory, and here's the resulting NDVI panchromatic image. So in the blue area of interest, in the April NDVI, your fields are pretty much black, so they're close to 0 value. It means there's very little chlorophyll, very little greenness. So it's the bare soil essentially. Whereas in the red areas of interest, you see there's quite a light grey colour, so NDVI production, the chlorophyll is up, so it's getting quite green. However, when we look at our July panchromatic NDVI, you see in the blue area of interest, the fields are bright white, so basically it's very high in NDVI, completely opposite to April's. Whereas in the red areas of interest, you can see a dramatic reduction in NDVI values, so little or no chlorophyll. So now, to actually produce a change detection image, you simply put in the April and July NDVIs into the red and green bands and perform a layer stack. So it'll produce a color ramp from bright green to dark red and colors in between. So that this will form the basis of our change detection. So to do this, again, you go to raster, maybe this time miscellaneous, and merge. So we're going to go to our input directory, NDVI data, and as you can see, our April NDVI and July NDVI are in there. You click layer stack, output file, save wherever you want your GeoTIFF to be saved, and again, here's your change detection. So you have a range from bright green to red, and this is only using the two red and green bands. You don't even need to look at the blue bands. So very simple and effective change detection. So with a little bit of knowledge of crops and land usage in rural setting, you can now deduce that the bright green are actually spring crops. So they would have been sowed in spring. And then your winter crops, which are the dark red, they would have been sowed the previous winter and pretty much ready for harvest at the end of July, start of August. So I'm now going to hand you over to my colleague Paul, who will show you a quick demonstration of this change detection data in ASIMAP.
Thanks very much, Ian. Okay, so here we have ASIMAP.com, and Ian has kindly outputted that image as a WMS, and we've consumed it within ASIMAP. ASIMAP, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a feature-rich web GIS that allows you to build custom applications quickly and easily. If you want to have a further look at it, you can go onto ASIMAP.com and register for a free account. I think it's 30 days or something like that. As I say, it allows you to create basically data sets and data stores, digitize information, various different pieces of spatial analysis, etc., etc. So here we have the NDVI image that Ian has created. You can see it in conjunction with the Bing imagery, so you can see and appreciate here the difference in spectral resolution. Obviously, the Sentinel image here is sitting at around 10 meters, and the Bing image has been much finer than that. But as I say, we can zoom around and think of maybe a few polygons created in this here from earlier. No, maybe not. But no, sorry, there's a few there, and you can review various different pieces of information. If we wanted to capture polygons or draw additional information, we could simply click in here and start to draw our polygons on the map. Features such as split polygons, etc., etc. You can draw a point line, various different pieces of analysis, integration with what3 words as well for geolocation, street view incorporated, etc., etc. But the best thing for you to do is log on, have a play with that yourself. I just wanted to show that we had provided a WMS feature there to consume some of the NDVI imagery that Ian had created and allowed us to overlay it on top of the Bing imagery or any other base layer that we wanted to use. So, as I say, have a play with that yourself and see how you get on. Any questions or anything like that, you can add them in. And I just want to move on to one other thing here. Just we're finishing up at this stage, but it's a few URLs that may be of use. As I say, there's asimap.com. The European Space Agency have got an Earth observation course. You can see the URL for it there, and I'll get Andrew to send it out after the webinar. The course itself is 5 weeks. I think it started on the 12th of September. It's 3 hours per week, and I think there's certification at the end of it, to the best of my knowledge. And that'll allow you to get up to speed with various different Earth observation techniques quickly and easily. Quite a good and intuitive course, and well worthwhile looking at. We also have the Copernicus, if anybody wants to see background information to the Copernicus program, and that'll lead you into Sentinel and Sci-Hub and all the other sort of related topics and features. In addition to that, just one final point, you will see that there's on the Sentinel website, you will see that there's a link to both an iPhone and an Android app, which allows you to download information relating to Sentinel missions. You can see the location of the satellites at any given time. There's a bit of prediction in there. You can see where the satellite's going to be in a few hours' time, and it gives you a bit of background information to the satellites and the missions, as well as keeping you up to date with any news or events that are happening. So that's really it for today. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions that you may have, feel free to forward them through, but I'll sort of end the recording now, and as I say, all URLs that have been presented today, I'll get Andrew to follow up with those and send them around to anyone who is registered. The webinar itself will be available for download shortly after the event. So, as I say, thank you very much. Much appreciated.